Screams, shouts, the whirring of wheels on the hospital corridor tiles. Kosi Akoko, move, let's go, a nurse yelled, pressing hard on the side of the stretcher as Kemi was wheeled through the emergency entrance. A wheeled stretcher burst through the hospital doors, pushed by two frantic nurses, while a doctor ran alongside, shouting instructions. Get the oxygen mask, now. Pulse is faint. Kemi lay unconscious, her face pale, body limp. A drip was inserted into her hand and an oxygen mask was fixed over her nose. Another nurse rushed forward with a syringe. BP is dropping, the doctor barked. Prepare the injection, start. Inside the emergency theater, they fought hard to stabilize her. Her chest rose and fell weakly as medical personnel hovered over her, working with urgency. Hours earlier, it had been an ordinary afternoon. Kemi had complained to her cousin Bimbo of a nagging weakness and mild headache. Maybe it's stress, Kemi had muttered, reaching for an analgesic tablet and gulping it down with a cup of water. Let me go and rest a bit. She retreated to her bedroom. Bimbo stayed behind in the living room, thinking little of it. But not long after, a sharp, terrifying scream echoed from the room. Kemi! Bimbo bolted upright and rushed in. What she saw froze her blood. Kemi lay motionless on the bed, eyes partially closed, her hand gripping her chest. She wasn't breathing. Help! Somebody help! Bimbo screamed, dashing out in tears. Akin, their neighbor, heard the commotion. Without hesitation, he raced over. The two of them managed to get Kemi into his car and rushed her to the nearest hospital. Now, hours later, machines beeped steadily around her. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered. A soft cough escaped her lips. She's coming around, a nurse whispered. Kemi opened her eyes slowly, confused. She blinked at the ceiling lights above her. You're in the hospital, madam. You fainted and were rushed here. Fainted? Where is... You were home with your cousin, Bimbo. She and your neighbor brought you in. It all came crashing back. The dream, the firing squad, the blood, Ademola's lifeless body. Her heart pounded. The prison yard? Is he alive? The doctor gave her a puzzled look. Prison yard? Madam, there's been no such thing. You were brought here unconscious. There was no accident, no incident. You collapsed in your sleep. It was a dream? Kemi gasped, struggling to sit up. Everything, all of it? Yes, you're safe. It was likely an intense episode triggered by stress or emotional overload. But there's more. You're 6 weeks pregnant. Kemi stared at him stunned. Pregnant? Yes, congratulations. You'll need rest and we strongly advise regular checkups moving forward. We've stabilized you now. A soft knock sounded at the door as Bimbo peeped in, her eyes swollen from crying. Kemi, she said, her voice trembling. Kemi managed a smile. I'm okay now, Bimbo. Thank you for everything. She lay back on the bed, placing a hand gently on her belly. It had all been a dream, a horrible, heart-ripping nightmare, but now she had another reason to keep going. Days later, After a brief hospital stay and series of checks, Kemi was discharged with instructions to come in for regular appointments. As she slowly walked out of the hospital, supported by Bimbo, the sun felt warmer than usual. Life had handed her a moment of reprieve. And for the first time in a long while, she whispered under her breath, "Thank you, God. There's still hope. Ademola must live."
The iron gates of the prison yard creaked open slowly as Kemi stepped through, her feet trembling slightly with each step. The dull hum of voices, clinking chains and echoing footsteps filled the air, but all she wanted to see was one face, just one. When Ademola was finally brought into the visitation room, his expression shifted from worry to relief the moment she saw him. "Kemi," he said, rushing forward as far as the chains would allow. "Are you okay? I heard you were taken to the hospital." "I'm fine now," she said, managing a tired smile as tears welled up in her eyes. "I came straight here after being discharged. I had to see you. To be sure." "To be sure of what?" Ademola asked, frowning slightly. Kemi inhaled slowly. "I dreamt they killed you, Ademola. I saw you executed." Ademola blinked, stunned. She stepped closer, rested her hand gently against the glass. "But now I know it was just fear playing tricks on my mind. And Ademola, there's something else. I'm pregnant. 6 weeks." His mouth fell open. A moment passed before he laughed softly, eyes glistening with hope. "Kemi, you are carrying my child?" She nodded. "You will not die in here, Ademola. God didn't give us this child just to let death win." For the first time in months, hope returned to Ademola's eyes. Prison walls couldn't cage Ademola's spirit. Though the cold grey bars confined his body, his mind found freedom in purpose. He enrolled in a distant learning degree program through the National Open University, determined to make the most of his time. Every spare moment was spent studying under the dim light of his cell, his worn notebooks stacked beside him like sacred scrolls. But Ademola wasn't only studying, he was saving lives. When fellow inmates fell ill, he sprang into action. Drawing from the medical knowledge he'd acquired at the University of Ibadan before his arrest, Ademola treated fevers, dressed wounds, calmed seizures, and comforted the sick with a gentle hand. "Call Dr. Ademola" became a familiar cry in the yard. Whether it was a bruised rib from a fight or a mysterious rash, Ademola was there, calm, focused, resourceful. With no access to modern tools, he improvised using what little was available. His compassion spoke louder than his uniform. Even the wardens noticed. "Who taught you all this?" one officer asked during rounds. "I was in medical school," Ademola replied with a tired smile, "before everything changed." To the inmates, he wasn't a criminal, he was a healer. Inside those grimy walls, Dr. Ademola was slowly building something priceless: redemption. Kemi refused to fold her arms and watch fate devour the man she loved. Once discharged from the hospital, she moved with quiet determination, her mind focused on only one mission: Ademola's freedom. She began reaching out to top legal minds in the country, criminal defense experts with strong reputations for overturning wrongful convictions and reducing harsh sentences. One by one, she pleaded her case, showing them every file, every document she had gathered. Some were too expensive, some weren't interested, but Kemi never stopped knocking. Finally, a respected human rights lawyer, Barrister Wale Onitiri, agreed to take the case pro bono. He believed Ademola's story deserved a second look. With him came a team of young, passionate lawyers and legal aides who threw themselves into the case like a crusade. Kemi also contacted several non-governmental organizations that specialized in justice reform and prisoners' rights. A few responded. They began investigating the trial proceedings, noting every irregularity, every biased testimony. Through Barrister Onitiri, a formal petition was sent to the governor of the state appealing for clemency. The petition came with medical reports, character references, and a passionate plea from Kemi herself as a pregnant woman fighting not just for her child's father, but for truth. In the eyes of the law, Ademola was a convict, but in Kemi's eyes, he was worth every battle. Kemi stood at the balcony of their Lekki duplex, staring into the distance as the sun dipped behind the skyline. The house, once filled with laughter, dreams, and promises, had become a hollow reminder of everything she was fighting to save. With Ademola behind bars and bills piling up like mountains, she knew it was time to let go. Piece by piece, she began to sell off the landed properties registered in Ademola's name, some in Aja, others in Epe. It was a painful decision, but every sale brought her closer to her mission, staying close to Ademola and surviving each day without falling apart. Eventually, Kemi packed her belongings and, with Bimbo by her side, relocated to a modest one-bedroom self-contained apartment in Festac town. It was small, humble, but close to Kirikiri maximum prison. That was what mattered most. Festac lacked the sparkle of Lekki, but it gave her a sense of nearness to the man she loved. From there, she could visit the prison often, without long, exhausting commutes. She needed that connection, for her sanity and for the baby growing inside her. To make ends meet, Kemi opened a small boutique on 512 Road. She stocked simple but trendy clothes, catering mostly to local women and youths in the area. It wasn't much, but it gave her something to hold on to, a sense of purpose in the middle of uncertainty. Kemi had traded luxury for loyalty and comfort for closeness. In Festac, she wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was waiting, fighting, and believing that someday Ademola would walk free.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this AfriTale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another magical story under the moonlight.
The once vibrant voice of Pastor Komolafe had grown faint, his words now slow and heavy with weakness. Age and illness had taken their toll, and the man who once led powerful revivals in Iseyi now spent his days on his sick bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. When Kemi arrived at the family house, the atmosphere was quiet and tense. The sight of her husband's father, lying frail and motionless, brought tears to her eyes. She sat by his bedside, holding his withered hand, whispering prayers under her breath. "Papa, it's me, Kemi," she said softly. His tired eyes opened slowly, and for a brief moment, they lit up with joy. "So, you are the one, Kemi," he murmured. "My son married, and I didn't know." "Yes, Baba," Kemi replied, gently squeezing his hand. "I'm sorry you found out this late, but I'm here now, and so is your grandson in my womb." A soft, frail smile spread across his face. "God be praised. Ademola is a husband and a father." Though the reunion was short, it meant the world to both of them. Kemi stayed for a few days, helping care for him. As she prepared to leave, she knelt beside him. "You'll get better, sir. I'll come back soon with your grandson in my arms." But time had other plans. Weeks later, while closing up her boutique, Kemi got the dreaded call. Pastor Komolafe had passed on peacefully in his sleep. His fight was over. The man who raised a strong son and served God faithfully had taken his last breath. It was the last goodbye, unspoken, yet deeply felt. The day of Pastor Komolafe's burial was both solemn and glorious. The church auditorium overflowed with mourners, members of his congregation, spiritual sons and daughters, family and old friends who came from far and near to honor the legacy of the great man of faith. Hymns filled the air and tributes poured in, each telling of his unwavering service to God and community. Kemi sat quietly in black, her eyes hidden behind dark shades, but her heart was heavy with grief. Beside her sat a few close relatives. Her stomach had begun to show signs of life growing within, a bittersweet reminder of the man who couldn't witness the birth of his grandchild. Meanwhile, behind the iron bars of Kirikiri, Ademola sat alone in his cell, holding a small worn photo of his father. He had pleaded endlessly with the authorities to grant him permission to attend the burial. It wasn't much, just to stand by the grave, say a prayer, and place a handful of sand as farewell. But the answer was cold and final: denied. The pain of absence gnawed at him. No final embrace, no goodbye. Just silence and the knowledge that the man who had raised him, prayed for him, and believed in him was gone. All he could do now was whisper through tears, "Goodbye, Papa. Good night, sir. I'm very sorry for everything that happened." Tears swelled in his eyes as he struggled to mutter those words. After the final rites and Pastor Komolafe was laid to rest, Kemi stayed behind in Isei for a few more days. She noticed Mama Komolafe, now a widow, moving about the house with quiet sadness. The once vibrant woman had grown frail with grief and age. Kemi knew she couldn't leave her alone. "Mama, come back with me to Lagos," Kemi pleaded one morning as they sat on the front veranda. "Please, I need you. The baby needs you." At first, Mama Komolafe shook her head. "Isei is my home. Everything I know is here." But Kemi persisted, gently reminding her that Ademola would want them to care for one another. After much persuasion and tears, Mama finally agreed. "But on one condition, no. I will stay only until you give birth and win the child. Then I will return to Isei." Back in Lagos, Kemi welcomed her mother-in-law into her modest apartment in Festac. Though simple, the space soon came alive with warmth. Mama Komolafe took charge of the kitchen and reminded Kemi daily to rest and eat well. Together, they began to form a quiet bond. Two women brought together by love, loss, and hope for the child yet to be born. Despite the sorrow hanging over them, this new chapter felt like a small light piercing through the darkness. The walls of Kirikiri Maximum Prison had heard countless cries, confessions, and dreams, but today they echoed with something different: hope. A well-respected NGO known for championing the rights of inmates arrived at the facility. It was spearheaded by none other than Chief Roro Williams, a wealthy philanthropist and retired naval officer whose presence commanded instant attention. Chief Roro, dressed in a simple kaftan with a cap to match, walked slowly through the prison yard, flanked by his aides and prison officials. He listened with intense focus as inmates shared their stories. Some begged for mercy, others spoke of regret, but one name kept surfacing: Dr. Ademola. Curious, Chief Roro requested to meet the man. When Ademola was brought forward, he stood calmly, his face marked by humility, not bitterness. The prison warden spoke highly of him. "Sir, he's not like the others. He's treated inmates when the prison clinic failed, saved 2 lives just last month, one from malaria, the other from attempted suicide. He even started a small chapel where prisoners now gather for prayer and healing." Chief Roro studied Ademola for a long moment, impressed not just by what he heard, but by the calm, intelligent look in his eyes. "How did you end up here?" Ademola lowered his eyes. "A mistake, a costly one, but I've not stopped living or giving." That day, Chief Roro made a decision. He would look deeper into Ademola's case, pull a few strings, and see what could be done. For the first time in a long while, Ademola felt something stir again. Possibility.